and welcome to the Financial Report. Hong Kong stocks recovered some ground after 2 straight sessions of losses, closing 0.3% higher today. The Hang Seng Index rose 67 points to finish at 21,655 on turnover of $42 billion. The benchmark received a boost after China's stronger than expected trade figures for July eased fears about a slowdown in the world's second biggest economy. Let's check on those numbers. China Mobile has gained 90 cents. AIA is 1 cent down. ICBC has gained 2 cents and CCB is up 3 cents. Hong Kong dollar exchange rates is 7.75 to the US dollar, 12.02 to the sterling. It's 8.05 to 100 Japanese yen, 10.36 to the euro, and 100 Hong Kong dollars is 78 RMB. The London FTSE has gained 28 points. The London gold is bidding at $1,288 US dollars an ounce, and the asking price is $1,289 US dollars an ounce. The Frankfurt DAX has gained 68 points, and in Paris the CAC is trading 28 points higher. That was the Financial Report. Join us for the main news coming up next.
Coming up, main news and weather report. Sparkling 25.
The ATV 2013 Miss Asia pageant is about to start. Ladies, come and show your beauty to the world.
The ATV 2013 Miss Asia pageant is now open for your application online. Every day we learn from him, from her, from someone we barely know. But what does it mean to you and me? Find out the answers on Check In Current News, Global 3000, tonight at 8. What will you choose, the forest or the oil? Giving up $7 billion that the country needs to survive, or not exploiting its petroleum to protect the Amazon forest? Will this country be able to convince the world that their forests are worth saving? Documentary World, A Future Without Oil, tonight at 10:05.
我想
小姐想美白定瘦身，我哋咩機都有，啲美容師有晒證書，價錢仲好平添。
我啱啱俾完錢，想約時間做瘦身機。
得一部機，最快要6個月後先有位喎。根據新修訂嘅商品說明條例，商戶接受付款時，如果冇合理嘅理由相信商戶能夠喺合理時間內供應貨品或服務，可能犯法。俾錢前問清楚先至證明。
Report from the heart of Berlin. Take a closer look at the development in one of the most powerful countries in Europe. How much do you know about Germany? Check in current news, people and politics, Friday night at 8.
From the best-selling American author of more than 50 books, Dr. Stanley has spread his messages across many countries to heal people's souls. Learn to control your life. Don't be afraid. In Touch with Dr. Charles Stanley. Every Sunday afternoon at 2.
Good evening, you're watching the main news on ATV. I'm Britton Clennett.
And I'm Edna Zeh. Here's a look at tonight's headlines.
Former Development Minister gets 8-month sentence for housing fraud but is spared jail time.
Chief Secretary and Environment Minister greeted by emotional villagers protesting against Two Moon landfill expansion.
Police force defends retiring officers' right to join pro-police rally despite concerns about neutrality. Former Development Minister Mak Chai-kwong and a senior colleague have been spared jail time with an 8-month sentence suspended for 2 years for cheating the government out of more than $700,000 in housing allowances.
The two were prosecuted for hiding their ownership of 2 flats that they cross-leased to each other in a scandal that cost Mak his ministerial post after just 12 days on the job. ATV's Emily Sue reports.
Mak Chai-kwong was all smiles as he left the district court in Wan Chai a free man early this afternoon. He had just been spared time behind bars for cheating the government out of hundreds of thousands of dollars in housing allowances decades ago. Facing the media scrum, the former development secretary pleaded for time to rest and reflect after his year-long ordeal, which began as his ministerial career came to an abrupt end.
And I think if I haven't taken up this post last year, this whole thing would not appear.
Mak made it a point to apologize to his co-defendant, former Assistant Highways Director Zhang Kingman, for dragging him into the scandal.
I have to say that I'm very sorry for involving Mr. Zhang in this particular case, in particular his family, Mrs. Zhang and his 2 sons. Mr. Zhang was my friend, was my good friend, and he's continued to be my good friend, and I think we will be friends for life.
Leaving the court separately, Zhang thanked his family and friends for their support, but he refused to answer when asked whether he blames Mak for his troubles. The pair were found guilty in June of cheating the government out of more than $700,000 in housing allowances during the 1980s, when they were both civil servants. Mak and Zhang bought flats in the same block of City Garden in North Point in 1985. They then leased each other's homes from 1986 to 1990, enabling them to claim government housing allowances for rent in a practice widely known as cross-leasing. Before Judge Johnny Chan passed sentence, lawyers for both men submitted large bundles of documents as part of their final plea. Eric Kwok presented more than 30 reference letters supporting Mak. Some were written by prominent figures including former Chief Secretary Henry Tang, Financial Secretary John Tsang, and former Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Secretary Stephen Lam. Kwok argued that the letters proved Mak had established a good reputation among his peers and superiors and displayed utmost professionalism at work. The lawyer also urged Chan to consider Mak's contributions to society, including taking charge of the government's relief efforts during the 2008 Sichuan earthquake and teaching at Hong Kong University, even after resigning from the cabinet. Kwok pointed out that Mak took immediate responsibility after the fraud case came to light and asked the judge to be as lenient as possible. Zhang's lawyer Chen Huan also submitted reference letters and asked the judge to sympathize with his client, whom he said had already incurred substantial legal costs and might lose his pension. Citing sentences handed down to defendants in previous cases, Chen asked for a suspended term. In his concluding statement, Judge Chan said there were structural deficiencies in the government's housing allowance system back in the 1980s. Chan said he was surprised many relatives and friends still believed that Mak and Zhang were innocent, and he was touched by the contents of some of the reference letters. The judge noted that if the pair had simply cross-rented their flats, it would not have been illegal. But they had tried to conceal their ownership of the apartments by using their wives' names to apply for the allowances. The judge decided to impose suspended sentences, taking into account their good character and the fact that they returned the money with interest to the government, $700,000 in Mak's case and $1.2 million in Zhang's. The two were each sentenced to 8 months in jail for conspiracy to defraud and 6 months for using documents with intent to deceive the government. But the sentences, to run concurrently, were suspended for 2 years. Mak and Zhang have 4 weeks to decide on their next step.
We have 28 days to consider what we should do if we want to if you want to appeal So this is what we are going to do, and I will discuss this with Mr. Zhang together.
If Mac Choi-kwong had not stepped into the spotlight by joining Leung Chun-ying's cabinet, it would never have come to this. And that begs the question, how many others have there been in the civil service who got away with housing allowance fraud just because they never came under the spotlight, unlike Mac? Emily Sue, ATV News.
Mac Choi-kwong suffered a stunning fall from grace after coming out of retirement to become a minister.
But while his downfall is complete, the leniency shown by the court today is already raising eyebrows. Joining the civil service as an assistant engineer in 1976, Mac Choi-kwong had a modest climb up the government ranks and retired from the Development Bureau in June 2010. The 62-year-old came out of retirement in July last year when Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying appointed him as Development Minister. But just 5 days after taking office, a Chinese-language newspaper exposed his housing allowance fraud, which Mac denied at that time.
I hope that I have explained sufficiently clear that I have followed or I have not violated any regulation regarding this private tenancy allowance. And that, in fact, a lot of this had happened 25 years ago.
Just a week later, he was arrested by the ICAC, forcing him to resign after only 12 days in the job. After he was sentenced today, Mac thanked his family and friends for their support, but singled out former Civil Service Secretary Joseph Wong. Wong had testified in court that Mac did not break any rules under the now-defunct Private Tenancy Allowance Scheme, or PTA.
In particular, I have to thank Mr. Joseph Wong, who had testified in court and give a full account from the historical and from the institutional and even from the ethical perspective of the PTA. And I think this is, should give the public and civil servants a good understanding of what had been going on for the last 20, 30 years on these particular PTA issues.
His sentence today is being seen as a slap on the wrist, with critics pointing out that lesser offences have earned harsher punishments for people who are not rich, powerful or connected. They say burning the national flag at a protest, for example, is treated more seriously. Emotional Two Mun villagers today urged the visiting Chief Secretary and the Environment Minister not to expand the landfill in their backyard.
The two officials were willing to listen, but insisted on reviving the stalled expansion plans next year. ATV's Bowling reports.
Ha Pak 9 residents made their demands clear when Chief Secretary Carrie Lam and Environment Minister Wong Kam Sing visited the Yuen Long village this afternoon to gather views on waste disposal. Although plans to expand Hong Kong's 3 landfills have been put on hold, the villagers who live near the Two Mun dump want the proposals to be abandoned completely. A village representative complained to Lam and Wong that residents have to endure the foul odour and health hazards from the landfill. In the village hall, the ministers were presented with a petition urging the government to scrap the expansion plans.
We hope we will normally live like the other guys. We hope every day we can sleep. We hope no need to turn on the aircon. Everything. Sorry.
Cheng vowed to keep fighting against landfill enlargement so that future generations in the village will have a better place to live. The officials then visited the Two Mun landfill accompanied by lawmaker Lau Wong Fat, who also heads the powerful rural body the Heng Yi Kuk, as well as the Two Mun District Council. The next stop was to gauge the views of residents of Lung Ku Town village in Two Mun. The final stop was the eco park to see how waste is recycled. Lam denied today's whirlwind tour was a publicity stunt to win backing for extending the waste dumps and said she'll also visit other districts with